According to conspiracy theories, this family is as powerful as the Rothschilds and more secretive than the Orsinis. And I stumbled onto this thread when I was researching who owns BlackRock, because we discovered that they're owned by Merrill Lynch, who is owned by Bank of America. And when tracing back the history of Bank of America via Nation Bank, which is one half of what became Bank of America, we wound up somewhere unexpected. And in that video on the main account that got like 1 million views, I said I wouldn't talk about this other side of the story, but it is just too interesting and we gotta go down here. So to be clear, I'm gonna lay out the conspiracy theory that is completely unproven. And then I'm gonna show you the process that I've just gone through to try to verify anything I can about any of the people involved to see if there's any legs on this thing. And we're not gonna end up with a conclusive answer. We're gonna end up with like 1 trillion newspaper clippings and like a really spooky feeling maybe. I'm not asserting that this is true. This is just a fun way to spend my day. And I did so much digging that I thought I should share. So if you search Google for the Payseur family, you'll find almost nothing, but you'll probably come across this article that's saved in archive.org. There's a lot of other versions of the exact same text of this article saved on other websites, and none of them have any source of where they're getting their information from, which is a big red flag. But the claim is that the son of Marie Antoinette, shortly before she was killed back in France, during the French Revolution, they sent their little baby away to live with another family. Eventually he came to America, took on a new name, and thus the Payseur family was born. Backed by a bunch of huge French and European wealth and sort of taking over American businesses. I know these claims are about to be out of control, but just bear with me because I did find confirmation that these people do exist. The question is whether the claims are all true or not. So during the Civil War, the Union government was confiscating a whole bunch of stuff. And these guys were based in the South Carolina mostly. And so they were going through a whole bunch of hiding of their companies and corporations and shell companies and just basically hiding all their assets that they had bought up. So it was already all hidden wealth because the government was coming to confiscate it, apparently. And apparently the family had some tradition of passing the wealth to the eldest sons, but Louis Cass Payseur, who most of my investigation will be about, he had no sons. And so the assets got put away in trust and kind of like hidden, and they got all confused and didn't get found until 1970. Whole thing there. We're going to skip that. The conspiracy theories claim that the Payseur family, through various fronts and such, owned all of these different railroads, including all the land these railroads owned. Oh, and all of these railroads. And all of these banks, including Morgan Guaranty Trust and Chase National Bank and Bank of New York and the Bank of Lancaster, which would go on through a series of changes to become Bank of America later on. And all of these textiles companies and these electric companies, including General Electric apparently, and all of these car companies, including General Motors Corporation, and all these insurance companies, and all these other companies, including United Fruit. If you know what the CIA did in Guatemala back in the 50s, that United Fruit. And these miscellaneous companies, including Colt Firearms, Standard Oil, Exxon, BF Goodrich, Sherwin-Williams, Western Union. So yeah, these are big claims. So anytime I come up against a big conspiracy theory that might be completely made up, here's my thought process. If you can verify that these people were real, there should be information about them on the internet. And if they had all this power and influence, you should be able to see at least some of that on the internet. And if you can verify that they're real, but almost nothing about them exists on the internet, then maybe we have some questions. And the only real way to verify that something's real is to get to primary sources, right? It doesn't help to read just documents that are written up by conspiracy theorists that are I know all these things and then show no sources. This whole document does not cite any sources as far as I can see. So we started digging. And I turned up a little newspaper clipping that had L.C. Payseur's name in it from the Lincoln Times in 1914. L.C. Payseur is a really notable name that not like a John Smith. When you search L.C. Payseur, you're not going to find 1 trillion other matches. And this got me thinking about newspapers. Turns out his wife got bitten by a snake. Turns out old newspapers used to report on the comings and goings of maybe just important people. I don't know. They would just say when they came to town and say when they left town. He sold the building he had a business in to someone else. See more of them just saying when the Payseur people come to town. Una Payseur was one of his daughters. Pearl Payseur was one of his daughters. I found all of these references to their family. And FamilySearch.com had the correct names and the correct relationships of the family of Louis C. Payseur. So it's looking like these people did exist. The question is, did they have the power and money and influence that the conspiracy theories say they did? This is clipped from a newspaper about the Bank of Lancaster, and you can see down here at the bottom that L.C. Payseur is a director of the bank. We're getting somewhere. I mean, that bank was the top of this list in the original conspiracy theory we came from. I found more historical records that linked him to this guy, Leroy Springs. That name comes up a lot as L.C. Payseur using Leroy Springs as his front guy to sort of like be in charge of companies and take on companies so that Payseur's name would be hidden, apparently. So I started looking into Leroy Springs more. I actually found the Payseur name on Wikipedia when I did this. Leroy Springs was in charge of the Lancaster and Chester Railway, which was on that original document. And L.C. Payseur is in the Wikipedia article about it. Probably the only place in all of Wikipedia you'll find his name, despite his apparent importance. Speaking of his apparent importance, I found a newspaper clipping that claimed that L.C. Payseur, a native of Lincoln County, has been elected mayor of Lancaster, South Carolina. Mr. Payseur is one of Lancaster's best and most prestigious citizens. That was in the Lincoln NC paper on Friday, June 7th, 1889. So then I looked for lists of mayors of Lancaster, South Carolina. Not a very big town, was not easy to do, but I found one list of Lancaster's historic mayors. Oh, actually, TikTok is cutting off the top of this, but it's from Lancaster, South Carolina. You can see in the URL, which you can't see. But when you go to the time when he's supposed to be the mayor, he's not on the list, despite a historic newspaper saying he was elected mayor. Then I found this old book, an attractive new book on the principal towns of Lancaster County. It's just like a historic book about the county with historic sketches. It's super long. Confirmed in it that it talked about the Bank of Lancaster. Leroy Springs is the president, and Leroy and L.C. Payseur were both directors on the board. They also had a section talking about all the nicest houses in town, and they said that Leroy Springs lives in a big mansion. L.C. Payseur also has a big mansion, and actually, L.C. Payseur's is considered one of the finest residences in all of the town, which is interesting. He was also apparently an alderman of the town, and they claimed that L.C. Payseur and this dude were two of our most prominent and successful merchants. So we got a lot of period pieces that seem to point to L.C. Payseur being extremely influential and important and wealthy at the time. I even dug up what I think are records of his old house or something like that, maybe one of his kids' houses. Oh yeah, and I found Leroy Springs' son, who was a flying ace in World War I. He later took over after Leroy Springs died of all of these different businesses, or at least some of them apparently. Oh yeah, and then on Ancestry.com, I actually found the Payseur family with the right names for people, and it even has the alleged Prince Louis Charles XVII, aka Daniel Payseur, who is allegedly the dude who got smuggled out of France, who was the son of Marie Antoinette. On Ancestry.com? I don't know how this works or why this is here, but I know that I found tons of corroborating evidence that these people did exist. They did exist in the place where the conspiracy theory claims that they existed, and they did have business interests and control over some of the businesses that are claimed in this conspiracy theory. So the question is, why is there so little mention of this family on the internet? Why isn't there a Wikipedia page? Why are they not in any more articles? Why doesn't anyone talk about them on TikTok and everything like that? It's kind of curious. This by no means proves that the conspiracy theory is all correct. We have no idea, and we probably never will. The point of this video is not to claim whether it's real or not. The point of this video is just to have a little fun, to show you a lot of old newspaper clippings, and to inspire some funny questions. Because, when you spend your whole life building a giant banking empire, and then you wouldn't just give it away, you'd want it to pass it on to your sons or your heirs or whoever it is you wanted to inherit it. That's how businesses pass from generation to generation. So it's just kind of curious that the second biggest bank in the world, Bank of America, directly traces its roots back to this weird shadowy family that had this whole empire of businesses in South Carolina, and apparently was instrumental in all of the different railroads at the time, apparently knew a lot of the robber barons, and yet no mention of them anywhere. Just kind of curious. Let me know what you think. Oh, and by the way, if this video gets taken down for what I just showed in it, that's a pretty sure sign of something. Because this video is completely harmless. This is just a bunch of old newspapers. There's no reason to take it down, right? Except maybe because